we do not have an intro outro today.
We do have the video though.
We do.
Babette,
Babette has the video?
so yeah, before we show the video, Babette, you have it?
Yeah, hang on one second.
Okay, thanks. So let me just do a little intro to it. So this is the video that we showed Friday night. It's not shareable yet because we're trying to do some last minute edits and credits and things like that. But this is the beautiful CBST chorus singing Achacha Alti. But you will notice if you did see it Friday night, it looked a lot better because it was video. And right now you're going to see it on Zoom. And that will explain the difference, why we want High Holidays on video and not on Zoom, because the quality of both the sound and the visual will not be as good on Zoom. But
Vimeo, not video, Vimeo.
Well, Vimeo is a form of video. It's not, it would be the same thing if it was YouTube or if it was live streamed. It's just a form of video as opposed to we will be using Vimeo, but it's just a form of the video. So Achacha Alti is the fourth line of the Psalm, and but as Jacob showed us yesterday, other parts of the Psalm have been put to music, but this setting is, I think we can all agree, a very famous setting written by Katz. Really captures something so profound about the Psalm in this sentence, which we're not up to studying yet. But let's hear it now and see the whole chorus, understanding it took hundreds of hours to put this together, whenever Babette can get it.
Okay, so hang on, let me find it because I'm on a totally different computer because my other one was not handling Zoom at all.
Okay, we can do it as the outro too, and you can get it ready for the end of the class. Okay?
Let's do it that way. That'd be great, thank you.
So we're just going to do it as the outro?
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah.
If I could take a minute for a few housekeeping things as we're
Sure.
now together, Rabbi. Number one, for all the people who are new, there is an email list for this class, which is a very important way of keeping touch with what we're doing in our materials, etc. If you are not on our email, I would like your email. I will put my email in chat. It is hslevine@gmail.com. Email me, and I will put you on that email list. Number two, there is a Facebook page where a lot of us post things we want to share. It is CBST Psalms class. If you send me your email, I will also send you an invitation to that class. There's also people who are new have asked about the books that we use, and I will send you the book list. We really do suggest that everyone have paper copies of at least the small book of Psalms, which is, hold on a second, which is here, and of Alter's translations. I will send links to those. And while we're talking about books, if there are any members on this call who do not yet have these for our liberal opinion service and with the high holidays coming up, if you are going to be at our high holiday services and you don't yet have a copy of the Machzor we're using, which is Machzor Lev Shalem, I will put in the chat a link to order it. Please, Rabbi has it. Please order it right now because they may, who knows? Everyone's ordering this. They may be backed up. They may be run out. And the Rabbi is, we're going to have classes on Monday night, right? Introduction to this beautiful new Machzor.
I forgot to say that last night, right? For
which you will want it. And the final thing is, Rabbi Moskowitz is teaching a beautiful class, which is no more than 15 minutes at 8:30, accessible on the Facebook page every morning. He's going through Maimonides, the Rambam's Hilchot Teshuvah, which is the laws of repentance. It is very accessible. It is a beautiful teaching. He leaves us every morning with something to journal or think about. And I really suggest, we've tried to make the month of Elul very special this year. I see Annika is nodding her head. She was there with me on Facebook this morning. It is a wonderful way to get your day started. You can watch it live at 8:30, or you can stream it anytime during the day, or go back and watch earlier ones, and there's a link to the text. So, with that, I will turn it over to the Rabbi.
One more housekeeping thing. Thank you so much, Harold. As we mentioned when we studied Psalm 8, Psalm 8 is the psalm for Rosh Hashanah. It's considered a creation psalm. So we have decided, with your permission and those who would like to participate, and Harold and I will send something out to everybody so you don't need to remember the details now. If you wrote a version of Psalm 8, we are going to invite you to record it. So we will use it. We're going to create the half-an-hour prelude to each Rosh Hashanah service with music of Psalm 8, various settings of Psalm 8, and the readings of the, I think 18 people in the class contributed interpretive versions of Psalm 8 as contemplative ways to lead into each of the Rosh Hashanah major services. So we will get to you and we'll give you instructions for recording it. But if you did write a Psalm 8, we'd love for you to record it at home and then send it in to us, and we will use it throughout the days of Rosh Hashanah. And the Machzor classes are going to be the next 3 Monday nights at the same time as our regular town hall, 6 to 7 each Monday night. And for next 2 weeks, I will be teaching about the new Machzor and things about it. And then the third session, Joyce and Sam will teach about music of the high holidays. And then at Slichot, Rabbi Rappur will teach about liturgy also of the high holidays. So all these things will be in we no longer have a Tuesday e-news. The e-news now goes out on Friday morning at 6:30 in the morning. So you should wake up to it, or if you're an early bird, get it. And that will have all the information, and everyone's welcome to sign up for the classes. And again, please register for the high holidays. CBST's website, link on the High Holy Days link, and you'll see all the information to register. Thank you, everybody. Now to Psalm 27. I want to ask if you have the Psalm in front of you. Yeah, let's just look at the beginning. Let's talk a little bit more about the word ori. I made one mistake yesterday I want to correct. The word menorah isn't for the word or for light. It's ner for candle. So it's a different shoresh, but you can see there's similarity for a ner and an or. It all has that. So let's talk about light a little bit and go more of why would it be so powerful to talk about the Holy One being the source of light? Now, think about it. Harold, I think you posted something on Facebook about the Latin word for light. And was that Yale's?
No, actually, the motto on the shield for Oxford University Press is Dominus Illuminatio Mea, which means the Lord is my light, which they chose
from this psalm.
From this psalm.
So let's think a little bit more about that word light and the role that it plays. For those of you who are Hebrew speakers again, and I think it's profound that somebody did bring up very early the beginning of Bereshit, which says Vayihi Or. That's another connection to Rosh Hashanah and this psalm and the season. So on Rosh Hashanah, one of the things that we observe is the creation of the world itself, right? We say Hayom Harat Olam. Today is the birthday of the world. Rosh Hashanah is considered the birthday of the world. So that's why Psalm 8 as a creation psalm is so deeply connected in our liturgy to Rosh Hashanah, and why one of the connections between this psalm and Rosh Hashanah and this season, if we're celebrating the creation of the world, and somebody rightly quoted the very first day of creation, it says, Vayihi Or, that let there be light. But as I alluded to yesterday, the light of the first day of creation is different from the light we see in the sun or even the light reflected off the moon, because the moon and the sun were not yet created on the first day. And the rabbis always ask this question, what does it mean, Vayihi Or? How can there be light if the sun and the moon were not yet created? Of course, the moon doesn't create light. But I'm going to skip quick. We know that. And Jews are very into science. We're not into magic. So what does it mean that there was light created on the day of creation? If the first day of creation, which we celebrate on Rosh Hashanah as Hayom Harat Olam, the world was created, what light existed when God says Vayihi Or, and we say, and it was good, right? Saul Zalkin reads this every year for us, right? And all of us chant with Saul. What do we chant, Saul? What does the congregation chant? We say,
Vayihi Erev, Vayihi Boker.
Boker Yom Echad. And Yom Echad is when there's the Vayihi Or. If you don't know what I'm talking about, on Simchat Torah, when we read the end of Devarim, Deuteronomy, and the beginning of Bereshit, Genesis, Saul always reads for us the beginning of Genesis and those first days of creation. That is Rosh Hashanah. We're celebrating the beginning of the world. So to understand light, we have to understand what it means by what light is created on the first day. So when I use, a smoke alarm is beeping here. Oh, that's going to make me crazy, but we'll see if we can go. It's the battery. What do we mean in the English word enlightenment? So what is when we even use the phrase enlightenment as a period of history, or even a concept, or even a sense of I'm enlightened? What does that mean? It's using the concept of light, but for sure it doesn't mean electrical light or the light of a candle, right? Enlightenment, the whole period of enlightenment was a period where science, the technical period of enlightenment is where science and reason and the arts and intellectual, it's not about literal light. It's about the deeper understanding of the world, right? It's about seeing things, but not seeing things with our eyes. It's about understanding, about discernment, about deeper understanding. And in some ways, the light of the first day of creation, Hayom Harat Olam, today the world is created, in Jewish thought is called the primordial light. And we're taught that the primordial light is created. What does primordial mean? Before whatever, ordeal. What does primordial literally mean?
First in line. Ordinal is line, like ordinal numbers. So primordial is the very first thing in line. The very first
thing in line. So it's before the creation itself of the actual objects which would create light. Light is created. And our the Jewish understanding of that primordial light is that it's there for us to kind of dip into when we need it, so to speak. It's a different kind of light than just the natural light of the world, just the natural light of sun and of electricity, which isn't natural, but it's natural in the sense that human beings created it. So we have to think about light when we say, Yud He Vav He, the one who breathed my soul into my body is my light. We have to think very deeply about what light means. And a part of it is dipping into the light of enlightenment, of reason and of thought and of discernment, as opposed to, the contrast that's always made with, which isn't really necessarily true historically. We are seen as the medieval period was superstitious and, we're not going to go through all that, but enlightenment was the explosion of science, the explosion of the arts, the explosion of understanding in a rational way of thinking. So think of other places, and even to illuminate doesn't only mean with a natural light. To illuminate something, again, is to take an idea can illuminate an idea, right? Ideas can illuminate us, can illuminate things that we're thinking about. We can feel, and I want all of those things to be in this word for you. When you say Yud He Vav He is Ori, is my light, don't jump over that too quickly. Think about what it would mean to think about the source of the power in the universe, which is responsible for my very existence, gives me or is the source of all of those things. And you might have some other ideas about the word light. And in Hebrew, we even have a classmate, Ora, where are you? There's Ora Ezrahi. Her name means light. Do you know why? How did you get that name?
I think it was a name my father gave me. My mother wanted to give me the name of her mother, which was a very Eastern European Jewish name. And he was born in Israel, and no way. He wanted,
a Hebrew name.
A Hebrew name. So that was how I love it. I love the fact that it's my name, because in so many languages, it just means wonderful thing. Prayer, light, gold.
Beautiful. Great. It is a beautiful, beautiful name. So that's a name, that's a word for light. And Harold, do you want to say something about enlightenment? I can't see the.
Oh, no, yeah. In French, the word for the Enlightenment is les lumières, which is the light. And
Beautiful.
Middle Ages are the Dark Ages.
Right.
The ages without light.
But of course, for Jews, the Middle Ages were quite a good period of history. So in Christian Europe, they were the Dark Ages. But for Jews who were not primarily the Jews who were in Muslim Spain and in North Africa and in Alexandria, it was we call it the Golden Age of Spain. So it was it depended where you were, right? Which culture. For Christian Europe, and if you study these periods, you know that much of the learning of the Romans were lost. Architecture, astronomy, all these things were lost and rediscovered in the period of the Renaissance and of the Enlightenment.
There are some fascinating comments from chat, if I could share them.
Yes, please, and if other people want to speak now, because this is a very important opening to this song.
Margot Cates reminds us that in a cartoon, when someone gets an idea or something becomes clear, a light bulb goes on over there.
Excellent. That's excellent.
And Ira tells us that one of the movements of Mahler's Second Symphony, the Resurrection, is primordial light. Ida said...
Wow. I need to listen to that again now.
Ida said, well, maybe Ira can share a YouTube recording in the Facebook page. Ida Masana says, a blind person I know said that 2020 would be the year when everyone will see clearly. Let's hope so. And Margot Cates also says, if we want to talk about someone who's alive, we say the light that is in their eyes. And when someone dies, you say the lights went off. The lights.
Interesting. Isn't that interesting?
And then if I wanted to give you a term of endearment, I would say you are the light of my life. And then Shab says the Enlightenment leads to the Jewish Haskalah, the Jewish Enlightenment. And I was wondering, does that have anything to do with light, or what does Haskalah mean?
So that's a great question. And yes, the Jewish word, the word for Haskalah is the same shorish as seichel. Those of us who have Yiddish speaking seichel, which means, common sense, right? Haskalah has the same shoresh, and it means
understanding, knowledge, wisdom.
Understanding, knowledge. It doesn't have the word light in it, but it means understanding. So it's that part of the Enlightenment that Haskalah is, and a maskil is a person who is a product of the Haskalah. So we talk about the maskilim, the people who adopted the ideas, and in Eastern Europe, there was tremendous tension between the maskilim, the people who were of the Enlightenment, of the Jewish Enlightenment, which in Jewish history is a very interesting period. It wasn't like Renaissance Italy, but it was intellectual separation from traditional Jewish practice and very into science and into literature and intellectual. But Haskalah is the word for discernment or understanding, but it's for the same shoresh as seichel, which is a word I think most people have some. Is that beeping bothering you too? I'll wait till after class. Sorry, just ignore it so I don't have to spend. So I want you to really think about where light is in your life and that feeling of it. And I know I don't like to use contrasts between seeing and blindness, because I think, and I've been really educated by people in the world that using the word blind is a bad word, like the word deaf, which the Bible uses a lot, and we have to be careful about. These are not words that are good to use now, because we understand even if somebody can't see with their eyes, it doesn't mean they're blind in all the ways that the colloquial negative, really negative, same thing if somebody can't hear, doesn't mean they're deaf in the negative ways that deaf has come to mean. So we don't like to use that, even though the Bible does do that. There's a lot of world in the Jewish disability rights movement to move away from that kind of language. So Jeremy Lawrence, I see you want to say something. Jeremy, would you unmute yourself and say what you have?
I just wanted to.
Hi, Jeremy.
Hi. I just wanted to add that the Enlightenment as a concept is a white male Christian definition. And as we move into different ways of looking at our culture overall, that we have to remember that, the idea of that is white male Christian.
Yes, that's true historically of that period, but it is the word itself of enlightenment We could use that even separate from the historical moment, right? We could say we feel enlightened.
Sure.
But you're right. There's a lot of rethinking about how historical periods are named. Thanks for that, Jeremy. So let's think about light a little differently than just a superficial, as we try and understand what it would mean for light to be a metaphor or a access to, or a way we think about the Holy One. Pretty different than the God and this big white guy with a long beard punishing us. Like if we thought about the power in the universe as being the source of this kind of light. And I think, if anybody's ever stood by an ocean where the light is spectacular, or on a mountain, or in the woods where light comes through and sparkles through trees, or walking down the streets of New York, or I've seen such spectacular sunsets this summer in New York City, that's light. And for those of you who are physicists or know about the spectrum, once you start studying the issues around the spectrum of light and the different qualities of light, there's so much more than just what we have as the superficial understanding. So, Le David, Yud He Vav He Ori V'ishi. So let's talk about Ishi a little bit. Where else have we seen this word for salvation? We have had it in several other Psalms. I don't know if you have a book in front of you. Maybe I'll prepare that for tomorrow so I can show you where they are in the different Psalms. Let's go through it. I want to try and finish Psalm verse 1 and 2. Okay, so the first half of the verse. So the first half of the verse ends where? Yud He Vav He is my light, is the source of my light and the source of my saving. Mimi, from whom should I tremble? From whom should I be afraid? Then you see there's a parallelism here. Yud He Vav He is repeated. Ma'oz, this Oz, Ayin Vav Zayin is the Shoresh, or it might be Ayin Yud Zayin. We never know for sure. Oz, remember the Oz moving company? Is an Israeli moving company. Oz means strength. So Yud He Vav He Ma'oz is the strength Chayai. Chai means life, right? And Chayai is my life. Chai, and remember, this is where the power of the number 18 comes. So for those who don't know, every letter of the Hebrew alphabet is given a numerical equivalent, and we use those to number our verses and to use numbers, and then to use in gematria, which is adding up the numerical equivalent in a word and finding meaning in what that numerical equivalent is. For instance, Satan, the Hebrew word for Satan, adds up to 364, I think, if I remember correctly. And the rabbis say on the 365th day is Yom Kippur, we can get protection from Satan, who's 364, if I remember that correctly. But Chai, so the first two letters of Chaye, Chai, which means life. Chet is 8 because Aleph is 1, Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, Zayin are 7, and Chet is the 8th letter of the alphabet. So Chet is 8. Yud is Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet, Tet, Yud. So Yud is 10. 10 plus 8. Chet is 8. Yud is 10. 8 plus 10 equals 18. And that's where the number 18 gets its power in our tradition, and why we give donations in 18. 18, we wear a chai, life means 18. So chet plus yud equals 18. Ma'oz chayai, the second yud in this word, chayai, is did anybody in the Gimel class, did you learn suffixes? Did anybody learn this year suffixes? My?
Yes.
Stuff you did? So the yud at the end of I ending is mine, because the word for I is ani, so any version of that at the end of a word, mimi. So that yud at the end of mimi is from me. Ma'oz chayai, the strength of my life, me. From whom should I, efchad, fear? Pachad is fear. So here the parallelism of these two verses, efchad and ira, are parallel. Ira, tremble, awe, and efchad, fear. So those two are parallel. Yud He Vav He is parallel. So you see these the two halves of this verse are fantastic examples of biblical parallelism.
Rabbi?
Yes.
This morning, Rabbi Moskowitz pointed out to us the similarities between Ori and Ira.
Yes, I said that yesterday also.
Yes,
No, absolutely. Go ahead. What else did he say about it?
He also said, that Yud He Vav He appears 13 times in this psalm.
I wasn't going to get to that yet, but
sorry.
yes.
Sorry.
Yes, I was going to ask people to actually count. Yes, that's one of the famous things about this psalm. If you count the number of times that the name of God appears in this psalm is 13. Yeah, I was going to ask people to actually count on their own, so they'd have to look through the Hebrew. But people should do that. It's one of the reasons that Psalm 27 has this connection to Moses comes down from the mountain on Yom Kippur on the 40th day after going back up, and he recites the 13 attributes. The 13 Yud Gimel. Yud is 10, Gimel is 3. Yud plus Gimel equals 13. The 13 attributes of God, and so there are 13. God's name appears 13 times in the psalm.
I believe
yes.
Shep has his hand up. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Shep.
Yeah, just wondering, is that the most times in any psalm that God's name is mentioned?
No, there are some psalms that are really long. I don't know if you got there's some psalms that are much longer.
And have more names of God.
What? Yes.
Really? Oh.
But 13 is a very powerful number in Judaism, unlike in Christianity, in which it's a superstitious number. In Christianity, in Judaism, it's a powerful number. And this is an example of the 13 appearances of the name of God. Okay, verse 2. Any other comments or questions about verse 1? Notice how we'll look at all the different translations we examine about the differences between how Ira is translated in Efchad. Ira, both of them are in the future tense. So it's Ira, I will fear, and Efchad, I will dread. But there are a lot of different ways to translate those two words. So let's look out for how those, because what does fear and dread mean? What do we mean by those words? And all of these images of from where do we get strength? Ori, from light, Yishi, salvation, Ma'oz, strength. These are all things to look at. Okay, verse 2. Anybody want to try and read verse 2 in Hebrew? Should we try and do that? As we go back to, since we've read it through once. Anybody will want to give it a try in Hebrew? Okay.
I'll do it.
Go ahead.
Okay. Berov alai mereim le'echol et besari sarai v'ovai hema kashlu v'nafalu.
Excellent. Thank you, Judy. Beautiful. So bikrov. So karov is the shoresh, kufret resh bet, and it means close. There are a lot of different words in Hebrew that have this shoresh in it. It can mean it's used for relatives. It can mean physical distance. It really means it's used most commonly. So coming close alai, to me. Again, the suffix for me, for the first person, Bikrova, and coming close to me, Mereim. The shoresh there is the resh aleph for evil or bad, And remember, the mem in the beginning of a shoresh transforms it into some kind of noun. In this case, it's people. But we haven't seen this form of it yet. We've seen all different versions. This is one of the very common words for bad. Ra is the shoresh there in the plural im. So the very simple translation, when they come close to me, when bad people come close to me, le'echol, to eat. Ochel, le'echol is to eat. What are these bad people going to eat? Bisarai. Basar is flesh or meat. And those of you, if you keep kosher, you know everything is basari, meaning fleshig, or milchig. Basari is the Hebrew way to say fleshig. Elechol es basarai, to eat my flesh physically. Now, remember I've said also about biblical Hebrew. Classical biblical Hebrew will start with a verb. If it doesn't start with a verb, it's making some kind of emphatic coloring of the sentence. So you'll notice these are not starting with a verb, so it's a feeling of, there's an emphatic here. Le'echol et basarai tzarai.
Yeah, Rabbi,
Yes.
when I read it, I never would have noticed in 100 years, but they sound alike. They're not the same, but sorry and sorry.
Yeah.
So what are those two words? One's flesh, but what's the second one, or what?
So is from the room we talked about this with it's used in different ways to mean trouble, like tsaras.
Sorry.
Like the Yiddish word tsaras is from this Hebrew word, tsaras. So, but it can mean people who give me trouble. It can mean my troubles. It can, you know what I mean? It has pain in the tochas feeling to it. The oivi, remember that's another word we've seen also. Tsari oivai, my troubles and my enemies. So different ways of translating those words. Li, mine. So we see here is the etnachta. So that's the first half, so to speak. Hema, chashlu, v'naflu. So the first part is saying, when these bad people come close to me, le'echol et bisari, they want to consume me. I mean, that is so powerful. When I feel like I'll be consumed, my very flesh will be consumed. Sarai v'ovaili, they are my tormentors, my troublers, and my enemies. Comma, hema, chashlu v'naflu. They, hema is a biblical, it's kind of a poetic way of saying hem or hen, hem meaning they. Hema, they, chashlu, will fail, v'naflu, and fall.
Rabbi,
Yes.
Yael points out that the root for the word we have bikrov, karov, also it becomes korban,
Yes.
sacrifice, or coming close to and sacrifice.
Perfect,
Have
beautiful.
something. And Lisa is pointing out, I believe, that tsar, that Sadeh Resh is also in Mitzrayim, the narrow place or the place
Excellent, perfect.
Of enemies.
Perfect, or yes, very, very good. Oh, I'm so happy to hear everybody making these connections.
Can I say one more thing about
Yes,
this
yeah.
word? I actually think that bikrov alai could be seen as a verb because they are coming at me.
Uh-huh. Yes, and that's very interesting. The bet in front like that can mean a lot of different things, and for sure it can do that. Yep, bikrov alai, when they're coming at me. And that's why this translator says assail. It uses a verb there. I agree.
In Betsy Immershine, we're getting into what these things might be translated at. Consume instead of devour. It'll be interesting when we get to the translations, how
Yep.
people translate these various different terms.
That's why I like doing this first, so your interest is piqued, and then it becomes really fascinating to see how different people translate once you've tried to figure it out and see what the simplest way to do it is. And you see the way this translator puts that I forgot what it's called, and I know somebody, the hyphen there, it's an emphatic, right? The hema, they're trying to say, when all of these things happen, ... it is they who will stumble and fall. It's kind of a way of trying to get what, by saying hema this way, and the etnachta there, the emphasis is, it's a little bit of a ... We'll see a few of those in this particular psalm where there's a little bit of a, this might, ... Like there's a little bit of I'm not sure the correct.
Ellipsis
there that creates an emphatic or a contrast. Not sure if that's the right word either. Okay, 3. All right, does somebody else want to try reading 3?
I'll give it a shot.
Thank you, Ira.
Anytime. Im tachaneh alai, machaneh lo yirali bi. Im takum alai milchama, zot ani boteach.
Excellent. So, if, tachaneh, machana. So you see those connections? That's using the same shoresh. One as a verb and one as a noun. So, and it's saying, and see, this is where the English loses what we just heard in that rhythm, right? Because in English, we're using different words. Should this tachane alai, machana li. So, and they use besiege here. Did they use the trend? No, they didn't use it up there. Should it's interesting they translated it as army, but a camp or I don't know, what would you say, Yael? A camp, right?
Yeah, camp.
Yeah.
It's even like summer camp. That's the word that we would use in Hebrew.
And in the army, what is that what a base would be called?
Yes.
In the Israeli army, yeah, it's a base. So if this should alai, again on me. Remember, I've spoken about in the past that some psalms use that suffix a lot, where you have this deep feeling of it, very personal, and some psalms don't. What I mean by the first person suffix, the me, my, I, and you really feel it, that it's in the Hebrew, because of the sound of the suffix repeats in all of these words, you really hear that sense of it's me, it's I, it's a person speaking. Sometimes it's much more third person, a little distant. Sometimes the Psalms, this one is so personal. It's really an individual speaking. And should this happen to me, what would happen? Now there's the word lo ira. That's the same word as in the first verse, ira, but in a different form of the verb. Because it's now my heart, libi, my heart, lev is a heart. Libi, my heart, lo ira, will not fear. And it's the same thing as ira in this first verse. And remember, the yamim noraim, the days of awe, this is the same word. My heart would have no fear. Im takum alai milchama, should coming up against me, takum, lakum, lamed, kum, to get up. We've seen that before. Kuf yud or kuf vav mem, to get up. Alai milchama, should even a war come up against me. Milchama is a very, very interesting word. It's the word for war in Hebrew. But what is the shoresh of milchama?
Lechem?
Lechem, the word for bread. And in classical study of biblical Hebrew, the explanation for that, where bread, the word bread, is the shoresh for the word for war, is the understanding that war is when people are starving or over basics. There's a connection between milchama and lechem. It's so interesting because it's such an unusual. Sometimes the shoresh has nothing to do with the word, honestly. But in this case, there's a lot that's discussed about the connection between bread and war.
Rabbi Karen Brody would like to ask a question, and I think she's raising that pardes issue when they devour my flesh. Are we talking literally about cannibalism here? Or, well, let's let Karen ask her question.
Yeah,
Karen,
let's hear what
and ask your question.
I'm new to this group, so I don't know if this is appropriate or not.
Everything's appropriate.
But I'm looking at the
not everything, but
I'm looking at the English and I'm wondering in two, thank you, Harold, when it's devour my flesh, are we speaking of cannibalism or are we speaking of that something about my soul, devour my flesh is I'm losing my sense of body because my soul is being destroyed?
Well, we'll look at the different translations. What we do, Karen, is after we look at this translation, we're going to go to a lot of different translators and see how they handle some of these questions. And then it becomes really fun. But
Okay.
a quick answer to that is that in biblical worldview, there's no separation from body and soul. So there is no, we don't know when they're using, there's no concept. That's a very Hellenistic idea, which is a later idea. In pre-Hellenism, in the ancient Near East, the body and soul were one. It wasn't separated until Hellenism, when we have a concept of the difference between the physical world and the soul. So sometimes in biblical Hebrew, when they're using the word for body, they mean soul. They mean, and we don't always know because it's an ancient language, so we have to be creative. But this is dramatic to say it like this. It's certainly dramatic, and I think it is pointing to a sense of fear of being annihilated. You know, there's a very strong feeling to it. But I just want to caution against seeing the in the original. But of course, we're not original biblical people. We're reading this and finding meaning in our modern world. And that's fun to play with the words and see how we can make meaning. Ultimately, that's our goal. How do we make meaning? But we want to try and understand the Hebrew as best we can, which has limits. And I've said before in the class, we have Israelis in the class, and you can't just turn to an Israeli and say, what does this word mean? Because what it means in modern Hebrew can really mess you up, because it doesn't necessarily mean what the author had in mind at all. And so Israelis have a different problem reading biblical Hebrew, and Americans always think Israelis have it easy. They still have to caution themselves against assuming they know what everything means, because it doesn't always mean what that means in a modern sense. And that's so it's not as easy to just say, oh, what does this word mean? You can't always know. It's interpretation. These words, this is what's so exciting about what we're doing. This text was written over 2,000 years ago. We are reaching back in time, decoding, trying to understand the ancient world. That's very, very, very powerful. And I know for those of you, Harold is a classicist. It's true for Greek and for Latin. You're going back into a universe that only exists on paper right now. And that's very, very exciting. But we have to be careful not to only put our modern perspective, but we're also here to learn, what are these ancient texts? How do they make meaning for us? All right, I think we might have to stop. Let's just finish. Let me just finish with Gimel. So, bezot ani voteach. Still, again, there's this similarity to verse 2. Still would I, voteach, if anybody knows Israeli Hebrew, betach is one of the ways to say sure or definitely or absolute. Bitachon is the word for security. And it's a very strong word of being secure, confident, strong. Okay, that's it for verse 3. And Harold, are there other comments or questions?
No, I think that we can go. Let's just see quickly. Let's see. No, I think we can go to the video.
So I just want to, if people have other ideas about the whole concept of light, and think about that a little bit more. If you know anything else, keep bringing it to us. And as I said, so this video will be released on Facebook, hopefully later today, with all of the credits correct, and then it can be shared. Right now it can't be shared yet widely. We're just doing the final little things on it. And I want to thank if you could raise your hand if you're in the CBST chorus, so everybody in the class can see, and you could look for our class members in the chorus as you'll see it. And maybe another day you guys can describe a little bit of how difficult it is to do such a thing, which looks so easy when you watch it. So I'd love to hear maybe a different day, because we don't have time today. I'd love to hear from the chorus members, maybe can tell our class a little bit what it's like to make one of these. So achat sha'alti, the fourth, with the sentence we're not yet up to, the fourth sentence of this psalm. one thing I ask from God, to live in the presence of God every day of my life. Thank you so much, everybody. See you tomorrow. Sorry for the beeping. I'm going to smash that smoke alarm.